Hey guys, it's Sarah with AmericanTrucks.com, and today we have a review and install of the Rough Country Mesh Upper Replacement Grille in black, fitting your 15 to 17 F-150, excluding the Raptor. This is perfect for the F-150 owner that's looking for a sleek black replacement grille that deletes the factory emblem. This mesh upper replacement grille features aggressive styling, giving your truck that blacked out look, but also adds these bolts for an accent as well. This grille features a steel construction with a black powder coat finish and the Rough Country logo in the center. It's also compatible with your front camera, and it reuses the factory shutter system. So as far as price goes, this grille comes in at around $200, which is on the lower end price-wise when compared to other options. And for your money, you're getting this nice mesh black replacement grille that deletes your factory emblem. I'm giving this install a 3 out of 3 wrenches on the difficulty meter, mostly because the install is fairly intensive and time consuming. You do need to bolt together several pieces of this grille, and you may need to adjust your body panels accordingly to ensure that it fits nicely. But all in all, this can be done in approximately 4 hours, so with that said, let's jump into our install. For this install, we used an impact gun, but a ratchet will work fine, 10, 8, and 7/16 sockets, an extension, a 5/32 Allen socket, 7/16 ratcheting wrench, and a 5/32 Allen key, as well as a pop clip removal tool. Alright, so the first step in our install is to grab your pop clip removal tool and remove all of the pop clips that hold on our rad support cover. Alright, so we're going to start with these 2 pop clips that hold on this part of the intake. It also holds on the rad support cover, so they need to come off as well. Moving along, there are 3 in this channel back here. You want to make sure to remove these. Then moving around to the rest of the pop clips holding on the cover. And you can lift up this part of the intake, you don't need to remove it, and slide out the cover. Now we can remove our grille, and before we do that, we want to make sure to unplug both of these connectors first, so we're not wrestling them later. Next up, we can remove the 4 10mm bolts that hold on the top of the grille. Grab your 10mm socket, and let's get these out. Next up, we have to remove a pop clip holding on this trim piece so we can get it out of the way and remove the final bolts holding the grille in. Once you've pulled back the panel here to release the metal clips, you don't need to remove this all the way if you don't want. We just need to remove that 8mm bolt down there. So grab an 8mm socket and an extension, and let's pull this out. Repeat that on the other side. Alright, so at this point we can remove our grille. Now there are plastic tabs going down right along the top, so you'll want to lift it up and then pull it out. Okay, next up we can remove the shutter assembly from our grille by removing these 10mm nuts. Grab your 10mm socket and let's get these off. All right, you also have to remove these 4 pop clips that hold on each grille to the top using your pop clip removal tool. Once those are off, you can go ahead and pull the shutter assembly off the grille. All right, so we have both pieces of our Rough Country Grille laid out here, and we're gonna begin to bolt them together. You're gonna wanna grab the smaller hardware as well as a lock nut and begin to bolt these, skipping the 2 center locations in each corner because this is where we're gonna bolt the brackets so it can bolt onto our truck. I suggest sliding it to the edge of a table or maybe laying it across something where you can get access to the back of it. Make sure you're installing with the Allen head bolt facing outwards. This should be on the surround area, not on the mesh area, so that you get the design that's shown. We're just loosely installing these for now. We will come back and tighten later on. Next up, we're gonna skip this bottom corner. Both bottom corners you skip to install a different bracket there. We're gonna move on to the one that's directly next to it. And I marked these, the ones to skip off with masking tape at the very beginning. Any way that you want to remember which ones to skip is totally fine. So then we're doing 2 and then skipping the next one. Then the very bottom center, we're also going to skip. Skipping the one after that. Now, if you're unsure of which ones to install and which ones not to, they do have an included diagram in the directions. Refer to that one to be sure. And skipping the other corner as well. And then skipping the very top corner after this bend. It may take a little maneuvering to get through both pieces of metal, especially once you're nearing the end of the hardware that you need to install. Now we're skipping this next one, and we skip the top 2, sort of even with the ones that we skip on the bottom. Installing this one in the center. Skipping the one after that. And finally skipping this last corner. Now we're moving on to the center sections. We're just going to install all of these. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and tighten these down. Now we're holding the bolt on top with a 5/32 Allen key, and we're rotating the nut on the back. This is just to keep it from scratching any of the powder coat. We're using a 7/16 ratcheting wrench to tighten down the nut. All right, next up, we're going to mount these brackets in order to mount our grill. And they face like this and they go towards the top 2 openings that we left blank. Now lift up the corner of your grill and install the bolts through the bottom, and then install a lock nut on top. Repeat that with the other top center mounting point. Slide the bolt in, slide the bracket over top. Make sure it's facing towards the grill, and then the lock nut goes on top there. All right, now these corner brackets on top here, they're gonna be these U-notch brackets. They're sort of slanted towards the side. You want them to slant in towards the center of the grill. Again, we're gonna install the bolts through the back of it since we have the grill sitting on its face. And then install a lock nut on top. Repeat that with the opposite corner. Again, installing this bracket facing inwards. Make sure the brackets are facing the appropriate direction and are lined up straight, and we're going to tighten these down. Just keep in mind we're keeping the Allen head side held as still as possible and tightening from the nut side so that we don't damage any of the powder coat, especially the one that's facing on the outside of the truck. All right, next up we're installing these two offset flat brackets on the outside edge of the bottom part of our grill. Make sure they're facing in, and then go ahead and tighten them down. Make sure when you are tightening that they're facing the proper direction, because you will need to adjust it later in order to get your mounting point. Repeat that on the other corner. All right, so it's important to point out that if your truck does have a forward-facing camera, they've included this bracket and it mounts towards the bottom of your grill in this formation utilizing these three holes. Now our truck does not have it, so we're just gonna leave it like this and mount it up to our shutter. We have our shutter assembly here, and we're laying the Rough Country Grille on top to line it up with the brackets that we just installed. So it may help to rotate this bracket up a little bit in order to hit where it needs to hit on the grill. And using a washer and one of the Allen head bolts, line it up to the hole in the factory grill, and we are going to use a washer on the other side. And Rough Country points out that this grill is bendable. It's designed to bend to sort of contour a little bit better to your factory grill. Then we're going to install hardware into the top mounting point of the grill the same way. Make sure you're using a washer and a lock nut. Repeat that on the other side. And finally, the last mounting point at the bottom. Again, you may have to bend the grill to match the contour of the shutter. Finally, install 2 bolts in the top of the grill on those mounting points. Using our 5/32 Allen key, we're using a socket this time, and a 7/16 wrench. Tighten these down. Using our Allen key and a 7/16 socket, tighten down the grill to the shutter at the top mounting corner. All right, so now that we have the Rough Country Grille all put together and ready to go on the truck, we can check it out side by side with our factory grill. And as you can see, it's a complete style departure from the factory grille. It features this mesh design with the Rough Country logo rather than the Ford logo, and it really changes up the look from the factory horizontal bars. So with that said, let's finish up our install. All right, now we can install the Rough Country grille. Line it up on the front, and you may need to be sure that the tab's clear, especially if you didn't take those sections out. Now you can install the bolts to the bottom of the grille. Line up your plastic trim piece. Install the pop clip. After you do the same thing on the other side, plug back in your wiring harnesses. And reinstall your hardware. Reinstall the rad support cover. Make sure you're tucking it under the intake portion. Line it up with the existing holes and install your pop clips. All right, so that is going to do it for the review and install of this mesh replacement grille. And remember, for all things Ford, keep it at AmericanTrucks.com.